Christmas morning had always been a careful performance in the Quinn household. Tea and porcelain cups, soft jazz in the background, matching pajama sets for family photos no one would ever print. Harper played her part like she always did, curled politely in the armchair by the fireplace, cradling a mug of lukewarm cider, pretending not to notice that her younger sister Charlotte was handed the shiniest gift first. It was the size of a magazine, wrapped in glossy gold paper and tied with a crimson ribbon. Charlotte unwrapped it with a dramatic gasp that made their mother beam. Inside, a leather-bound itinerary packet, complete with hotel confirmations, flight details, and a welcome letter printed in French cursive. "A winter seminar in Paris!" she squealed, already halfway through reading. "Focus. Global leadership for women in business." Harper blinked. "Wow." Her mother laughed, brushing imaginary lint off Charlotte's shoulder. "We thought it might give you a little head start with your next career leap," she said. "It's about time someone as brilliant as you takes center stage." "And Harper," her father added, reaching under the tree for another box, "and we didn't forget you." She smiled, out of habit mostly, and accepted the package. It was light, soft edges, book-shaped. Inside, a paperback, tan cover. A cartoon woman in business casual hugging a unicorn mug, surrounded by overdue bills and empty ramen cups. The title? Act Like a Grown-Up. Subheading? How to Stop Pretending and Start Performing. No one said anything for a moment. Her mom broke the silence. I just saw it and thought, this is exactly the kind of tough love that might help you make some serious changes next year. Charlotte snorted, glancing at the cover. God, that's savage. Harper nodded slowly, flipping to the back cover as if it might rescue her. It didn't. Just a fake endorsement from a corporate coach who called adulthood a brand you wear with heels. "Thanks," she said, voice steady. Very, thoughtful. She said it because she had practice. Saying thank you for passive-aggressive comments. Smiling when people called her work cute. Laughing off jokes about glitter and glue as if they didn't scratch at her skin. Because what else do you do when you're 32 and your family still treats you like a backup babysitter with an imaginary career? That afternoon, Charlotte bragged about the bonus gift their parents had added, a designer luggage set to match her ambition. Harper, meanwhile, was complimented on how well she took jokes. Her father told her she had a great attitude. No one else would have taken that book so graciously, he said, as if she'd received an award instead of an insult. At dinner, she brought homemade rosemary rolls. Charlotte brought pre-packaged chocolate mousse. Guess which one got praise like it was Michelin star quality? Their mom clinked her glass and said, "Charlotte always knows how to make things classy." Then turned to Harper and added, "And Harper, thank you for remembering to bring napkins." Afterward, while scraping plates into the trash and listening to Charlotte talk about leveraging Paris for her personal brand, Harper felt a quiet ache grow behind her ribs. Not anger exactly, not even hurt, just something tired. She'd been a helper her whole life. A warm laugh, a reliable yes. Her job as a teaching artist for kids was adorable. Her workshop events were sweet. Her side hustle with puppet shows? Still playing dress up, huh? They didn't see her work. They saw a phase, a delay, a refusal to step into real life. That night, curled up in the studio apartment above the town's old tailor shop, her sanctuary, her mess, her own, Harper set the book on her desk and stared at it. The cover character's eyes bugged out in cartoon panic, one heel in a grocery bag, the other in an HR seminar. She looked ridiculous. But more than that, she looked afraid, and Harper realized something. They had given her a book called Act Like a Grown-Up. They had no idea she already was one. Harper could remember one night in particular, a stark tableau etched into her memory, a silent testament to the unequal distribution of familial burdens. Charlotte had just started seeing Marcus and their parents in their well-meaning but ultimately dismissive fashion, decided to throw a little dinner for him. Nothing fancy, just a casual meet and greet, as they called it. The phrase itself felt like a thinly veiled euphemism for, "We're showcasing our golden child, and you, Harper, will facilitate." Harper, ever the dutiful daughter and sister, was asked to help set the table, a task that morphed into a Herculean effort against a backdrop of domestic chaos. She was tasked with preparing dessert, a sugary confection that mirrored the saccharine facade of the evening, and watching Elodie, a whirlwind of childhood energy, all while pretending she wasn't wearing flour on her shirt, a testament to her hurried efforts and exhaustion in her eyes, a reflection of her eternal weariness. The kicker, the moment that solidified the evening's imbalance, arrived during the toast. As they raised glasses of cheap wine under the warmed and deceptive glow of the dining room lights, her mom, with a flourish of maternal pride, raised a glass to Charlotte's new beginning and Marcus's bright future, and not once acknowledged Harper had made the entire evening possible. Not a single word of appreciation for the logistical ballet she had orchestrated, the silent labor that ensured the evening's smooth execution. Later, as the evening wound down, Charlotte, flushed with the glow of new romance and oblivious to her sister's quiet sacrifice, giggled and told her, "You're so domestic. You'd make someone the perfect wife." It wasn't a compliment, a genuine acknowledgement of her skills. It was a dismissal wearing lipstick, a patronizing pat on the head that relegated her to the role of a domestic servant, a footnote in her own family's narrative. The phrase hung in the air, a subtle yet potent reminder of the chasm that separated their perceived roles. It wasn't just holidays and family events either, those carefully curated moments designed to showcase the family's unity while subtly reinforcing Harper's secondary status. Harper had become her sister's Plan B, Plan C, and sometimes Plan D, never the first call for anything except when something needed to be fixed, when a crisis loomed. When Marcus, in his perpetual state of distractedness, forgot Elodie's school paperwork, Harper, ever reliable, had to rush it in, a last-minute savior. When Charlotte had a last-minute conference, a sudden disruption in her meticulously planned schedule, and no sitter could be found, Harper's name was summoned like a spell, an incantation uttered in desperation, one she was expected to obey without question, without hesitation. What no one seemed to ask, what remained conspicuously absent from their calculations, was what Harper had to cancel to say yes. The date she'd bailed on, the sleep she'd skipped, the rent she nearly missed because she took time off for a favor no one paid her back for, a silent sacrifice that went unacknowledged and unrewarded. And yet, despite the mounting resentment, she kept showing up, a testament to her unwavering loyalty, a stubborn refusal to abandon those she loved. Because that's what she did. That was her role, her unspoken duty. She showed up for Elodie's preschool recital when Charlotte, caught in the throes of her busy life, claimed traffic was a nightmare, a convenient excuse for her absence. She showed up for emergency Sunday babysitting when Marcus, in his casual forgetfulness, forgot about their anniversary dinner, a moment meant for romance stolen by his oversight. She showed up with crafts, books, and snacks, a carefully curated arsenal of childhood delights, because she didn't want Elodie to feel the ripple of being an afterthought. Something Harper knew too well, a familiar sting of being overlooked. It wasn't that Harper resented the child, far from it. Elodie was a beam of sunlight in a fogged-out world, a bright spark of innocent joy in the midst of adult complications. But even sunshine could burn if you stood in it too long without a break, without respite. Harper had no breaks, no shade, no acknowledgement that her weekends were being rewritten in invisible ink, always replaced by someone else's priorities, their needs eclipsing her own. And the problem was, no one thought they were doing anything wrong. In their minds, they were simply utilizing a readily available resource, a selfless individual who always said yes. To them, Harper was just there, the sister who didn't mind, the helper, the aunt with free time, a phrase that belied the reality of her increasingly fragmented life, the one who didn't say no, a silent enabler of their convenience. And when she did, on the rare occasion she set a boundary, a desperate attempt to reclaim her own life, she was acting out, being difficult or not herself. A label designed to invalidate her feelings and silence her dissent. It was funny, in a cruel way, a twisted irony that underscored the family's blindness. Her family thought Harper hadn't grown up because she played with kids for a living, because she wore glitter on her sneakers and turned toilet paper rolls into dragons, a whimsical facade that masked her profound emotional intelligence. But they were the ones still treating her like a child, seen but not heard, assigned but not respected, relegated to a supporting role in their own lives. She wasn't a person to them with her own desires, dreams, and boundaries. She was a resource, a tool, a well of endless energy and patience, one they dipped into whenever convenient, never asking if it was running dry, never considering the cost of their convenience. What hurt the most wasn't even the imbalance, the unequal distribution of labor. It was the invisibility, the erasure of her own needs. The way her mother praised Charlotte for managing so much as a working mom, a testament to her perceived strength, but never once praised Harper for the unpaid labor that made that balance possible. the silent support system that allowed Charlotte to thrive. The way her father spoke about Charlotte's job with pride, a symbol of her success, but told Harper, well, at least you enjoy what you do, like joy and value couldn't coexist, as if her happiness negated her worth. But Harper did enjoy what she did. She loved watching shy kids blossom, witnessing their tentative steps into the world. She loved messy art tables and storytelling circles, the chaotic beauty of childhood creativity. She loved being someone children trusted with their first questions about the world, a guide in their early explorations. What she didn't love was being treated like her joy disqualified her from being taken seriously, like her passion diminished her value. She was tired of smiling through crumbs, both literal and metaphorical, the remnants of a life lived on the periphery, tired of being the glue holding everyone's schedule together while her own fell apart, her own life sacrificed on the altar of their convenience. Tired of knowing that if she disappeared it would take weeks, maybe longer, for anyone in her family to realize how much she'd actually been holding, how much they had taken for granted. And it was that quiet realization, like a whisper in the dark, a chilling understanding of her own expendability, that made her start thinking not about how to be helpful, but how to be whole. Because being helpful had gotten her applause, a fleeting moment of recognition before she was relegated back to the shadows. But being whole, maybe it was time to find out what that felt like, to explore the uncharted territory of her own self-worth. The email wasn't long, just under 300 words. But it carried the weight of a decade's worth of swallowed pride, dismissed feelings, and unpaid weekends. Harper stared at it for nearly an hour before hitting send, fingers hovering above the trackpad, heart pounding like she was detonating something instead of finally telling the truth. She hadn't planned to write it, not really. It had started as a note to herself, a kind of personal manifesto scribbled down after yet another phone call from her mother that began with, "Hey, sweetie, quick question," and ended with, "We'll just need you for a few hours, like always." Like always, but this time something snapped, or maybe finally something clicked. The subject line was simple. Moving forward, she addressed it to her parents and her sister, Amelia. In the first paragraph, Harper thanked them for the holidays, for Elodie's smile, for the memories that were good. Then came the turn. She explained clearly and without venom that starting immediately, she would no longer be available for regular babysitting. Not on weekends, not last minute, not unless it was discussed well in advance and mutually agreed upon. She loved Elodie deeply and unconditionally, but she wasn't Elodie's third parent. She wasn't a backup plan. She also clarified that she would not be contributing financially to Amelia's grad school tuition or career-enhancing trips abroad anymore. "I've supported those dreams generously," she wrote, "but I have dreams of my own, and they deserve the same attention and investment. No passive aggression, no snide remarks, just boundaries, clearly, respectfully, and for the first time in her life, unapologetically stated." She hit send, and then she turned off her phone. The silence didn't last. By the next morning, Harper had 5 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and a group text from her mom that began with, "We're shocked. This feels unlike you. Please reconsider for the sake of the family." Her dad sent one too. "We're just worried." Is something going on emotionally? As if boundaries were a symptom of breakdown instead of evidence of growth. Amelia, unsurprisingly, didn't call. She sent one line. "So I guess I'll find another babysitter." Harper didn't respond. Instead, she made herself breakfast for the first time in weeks that wasn't rushed or interrupted. She went for a walk. She listened to a podcast. She called a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. And when Elodie's face popped into her mind, as it always did, she smiled, a soft ache in her chest. This wasn't about Elodie. It never had been. It was about the system that had turned Harper into a utility. By Sunday night, things escalated. Her mom showed up at her door. Harper lived in a tiny studio above a flower shop, and when she opened the door to find her mother standing there with a Tupperware of just some leftovers and a look of theatrical concern, she knew exactly where this was going. "I just wanted to check in," her mom said, stepping in without waiting for an invitation. "We're all a little confused. This email came out of nowhere." "It didn't come out of nowhere," Harper said calmly, placing the container on her counter without opening it. Her mom sighed. "Sweetheart, you've always been so dependable. This sudden rigidity, it's just not like you." "It's not rigidity," Harper replied. "It's clarity." "You're upset about the book, aren't you? I told your father it was a bad idea." Harper blinked. "You bought 2 copies." I thought you could use some inspiration. Your sister's doing amazing things. And there it was, the pivot, the comparison, the golden shadow of Amelia cast once again across the table like a centerpiece. Mom, Harper said gently, you've spent years praising Amelia's ambition while treating my life like a hobby. You don't have to understand my work. But you will respect it. Her mother flinched slightly, like the word respect had never been aimed so directly at her before. We've always supported you, she said defensively. No, Harper corrected. You've depended on me. Not supported. You've relied on my time, my money, my silence. That's not support. That's convenience. Her mother's lips tightened. So, this is it? You're cutting ties with your family? I'm setting terms, Harper said. There's a difference. That night she sat in bed rereading the email she'd sent. It still felt right. A little terrifying, but right. And oddly freeing. The fallout continued through the week. Amelia called once. Didn't leave a voicemail. Her dad texted an article about the importance of family unity with no context. Her mom sent a long message that began with, I just don't recognize you anymore. But in the quiet, something beautiful happened. Harper slept. Really slept. 8 hours, undisturbed. She started journaling again, something she hadn't done since college. She took a part-time gig helping a local bookstore with their kids' storytelling program, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. And when she passed a mirror one morning, half asleep, hair messy, glitter on her sleeve from the work, she smiled. Not because she looked glamorous, but because she looked like herself. One day, a parent at the daycare stopped her during pickup. My daughter says you're her favorite grown-up, the mom said with a chuckle. She says you're the only adult who listens. That stuck with Harper all day. The only adult who listens. Funny how that used to be her job in her family. Listening, absorbing, being the buffer, the bridge, the babysitter, the helper. Now she was the one drawing the line. Not because she didn't care, but because she finally did. About herself. She never meant to cause a rupture. But maybe that was inevitable. Maybe growth always feels like rebellion to the people who benefited from your silence. And maybe adulthood wasn't about checking boxes or matching her sister's resume bullet for bullet. Maybe it was about deciding what kind of life you wanted, and refusing to shrink for anyone who didn't get it. When Harper hit send on that email, she didn't expect silence. But that's exactly what she got. No passive-aggressive reply. No guilt-tripping emoji-laced follow-up. Not even a sarcastic thanks for letting us know. Just radio silence. The kind of silence that fills a room even when no one's in it. The kind that wraps itself around your spine and whispers, they're not used to hearing you speak like this. She waited 3 days, then 4, until finally on the 5th day her mom called, at 6:43 in the morning. Harper, the voice said tight and breathy, I read your note. I have to say, I didn't expect that tone from you. It felt very cold. There it was. The word again. Cold, not clear, not confident, not assertive. Cold. Harper blinked, still half asleep. I wasn't trying to be cold. I was trying to be honest. Oh, well, it didn't sound like you, her mom continued. You've always been our gentle girl, our sunshine, the one who never makes things complicated. Maybe I'm tired of being uncomplicated, Harper replied, sitting upright in bed. There was a pause. Then a sigh. I just don't understand, her mom said. Where is this coming from? You've always loved helping with Elodie. You've always said how much you enjoy spending time with her. I do love Elodie, Harper said, but loving her doesn't mean sacrificing myself entirely. I can love her and still want a weekend off. I can love her and not want to bankroll Amelia's 5th conference in 5 months. You make it sound so transactional, her mom snapped. Family isn't a transaction. Harper felt the heat rise in her chest. No, but for years, I've been giving and giving, and no one's ever stopped to ask how I'm doing. That's not family either. The line went quiet again. Then her mom spoke in the voice Harper had come to recognize as the final word. I think you're being dramatic. Harper exhaled slowly. There it was. The dismissal. I'm not going to apologize for setting boundaries, she said evenly, and I'm not going to pretend that the way I've been treated is okay. Well, her mom said stiffly, That's your choice. But don't expect us to understand. Then she hung up. Harper stared at the phone. She wasn't surprised, but it still stung. A few hours later, the group chat lit up. Her dad chimed in. Mom told me what's going on. Harper, you've never acted this way before. We're all a little concerned. This just feels off. And Amelia? She sent a single text. I didn't realize you hated us so much. Wow. Harper didn't reply, not because she didn't have 1,000 things she wanted to say, but because for once she didn't feel the need to explain herself. The emails had said everything, but the fallout came anyway. The next week she was left out of the usual weekend check-in calls. No one asked her if she could watch Elodie on Saturday. No one updated her on Amelia's next trip or forwarded her the latest family Google Calendar invite. She had become invisible, again, but this time on her own terms. It was quiet and lonely, but also peaceful. Until the whispers started. Aunt Jen texted her randomly. Heard you're going through something. If you ever want to talk. Her cousin Maddie messaged. Your mom said you were pulling away. Everything okay? Harper smiled bitterly. She wasn't pulling away. She was finally standing still and watching everyone else sprint past her with expectations strapped to her back like bricks. But the worst moment came at Elodie's preschool pickup. Harper had stopped by to drop off some art supplies she'd promised the teacher months ago. As she walked into the building, she ran into one of the other moms, someone who knew Amelia from yoga. Oh, you're Amelia's sister, the woman said brightly. The one who's, having a bit of a hard time? Harper blinked. Excuse me? The woman looked flustered. Oh, I just meant Amelia said you were going through a phase, pulling back, wanting space. It's totally normal. Harper laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. It was sharp, bitter, measured. Sure, she said. A phase, like growing a spine. She left the building before the woman could reply. That night, Harper sat in her apartment with the fairy wings she used to wear at birthday parties laid out on her bed. 6 pairs, all colors of the rainbow, and not a single one felt silly. They weren't symbols of immaturity. They were armor, joyful, glittery armor. She remembered one birthday party last spring, 5-year-old twins in a backyard filled with balloons and chaos. One of them had tripped and scraped his knee. Harper had crouched beside him, pulled a mini unicorn bandage from her pouch, and whispered, You're brave, even when it hurts. The kid had sniffled, then grinned through tears. That was the kind of grown-up Harper wanted to be. The kind who didn't teach kids to hide their feelings, but to move through them. The kind who didn't reward silence, but celebrated kindness. The kind who could wield both glitter and grit. So the next morning, when Amelia texted, We're planning Elodie's birthday, can you help? Harper wrote back, Thanks, but I'm no longer available for unpaid planning or childcare. I wish you the best with the party. 2 hours later, her mom called. This is ridiculous, she said. You're being selfish. We need to talk about what's happened to you. Harper replied calmly. I stopped being useful, so now you're questioning my sanity? That's not fair. Neither was asking me to give up my weekends, my money, and my voice, but I did, for years. And no one called that a phase. There was silence on the other end. I'm not being selfish, Harper said. I'm being self-respecting. Her mom didn't reply. That weekend, Harper didn't show up to Elodie's party. She didn't help hang streamers or bake cupcakes or calm toddlers in princess dresses. Instead, she took herself to a bookstore, wandered the aisles with no schedule, and bought a book titled The Power of Saying No. It wasn't wrapped in glitter, but it was beautiful, because sometimes growing up doesn't look like quitting fairy wings. Sometimes it looks like finally wearing them for yourself. Harper had been expecting tension. After the email, after the incident at the daycare, after the radio silence that followed, it was inevitable. But what she hadn't expected was that it would all blow up over birthday cake. It started with a Facebook post. She wasn't tagged. She wasn't even mentioned. But there was Elodie, front and center, in a pastel bouncy castle, wearing a frilly dress and holding a unicorn-shaped balloon. Her smile was wide, but Harper knew that smile. It was the polite one, not the one she wore when she was truly lit up inside. The caption read, Some families are born, others show up. It took Harper a full 10 seconds to process the passive aggression, another 10 to decide she wasn't going to engage. She closed the app, set her phone down, and went back to decorating cookies for the weekend party she'd agreed to host for one of her kindergarten students. Then came the texts. "Hey, just so you know, Elodie keeps talking about your party," Amelia wrote. "She's confused." Harper didn't reply. A few hours later, her mom chimed in on the family thread. "We're just trying to understand why you're doing this. The way Elodie keeps saying the other party was better is hurtful." As if Harper had whispered propaganda into a toddler's ears. Then came the voice message from her dad. Short, clipped, dramatic. "We don't appreciate you undermining Amelia as a mother. You made her daughter think your little glitter show was the real birthday party. That's not okay." Little glitter show. Harper exhaled slowly and placed her phone face down. Her tea had gone cold again. It wasn't the party that bothered them. It wasn't even Elodie's obvious preference. It was that Harper had shown them up, without trying to. She just made a child happy in a way they couldn't replicate, with rented decor and performative smiles, and they hated her for it. A few days later, the real twist came. She was in the staff lounge, refilling the glitter container, because of course she was, when her boss, June, walked in looking tense. "Hey," June said quietly, "can I talk to you for a second?" Harper followed her to the corner office. Inside, June pulled up her email. "We got a message, anonymous, but—" She trailed off. On the screen was a formal-sounding inquiry. Had any staff been witnessed removing children from daycare without proper authorization? Harper blinked. "I assume this is about Elodie," June said gently. "I just need to ask, do you have any documentation of permission?" "I have texts," Harper said immediately, heart pounding. She confirmed drop-off. She knew. "I didn't just take her." "I believe you," June said, "but you know the process. We'll have to file a response." That night, Harper created a folder. She titled it Proof. Inside, she saved screenshots, the RSVP from Amelia. "Same time as last year, right?" Her follow-up. "Just keep it simple." The confirmation text. "We'll drop her off around 11. She also saved the voice note Elodie had sent afterward. A garbled, joyful burst of "Fairy party, best party ever." It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. She knew how fast lies could spread when people needed a scapegoat. She knew how easily they would reframe her love as sabotage. She didn't cry, but her hands trembled as she closed the laptop. The next morning she received a voicemail from her father. "We've decided not to escalate this with the authorities. For now. Think about that. Think about that." As if it was a kindness. As if her generosity, her unpaid weekends, her patience, her willingness to love Elodie without conditions had always been contingent on silence and obedience. She made tea. She texted June a thank you. Then she opened a new email. To Amelia. Subject clarification. "Hi, Amelia. Since I'm hearing from others that you may be suggesting I took Elodie without permission, I've attached all relevant documentation confirming your consent. If I receive any further reports of this narrative being spread, or if my workplace is contacted again, I'll consult legal counsel. I love Elodie. I always have, but I will not be accused of something I didn't do. Harper." No emotion, no passive aggression, just truth. There was no reply from Amelia, but the next day her mom called. "Can we talk?" "I'm working," Harper said flatly. "Just a moment," her mom insisted. She stepped into the hallway, still holding a glitter-stained apron. "Your sister's upset," her mom began. "She says you've been cold. Honestly, I have to agree." Harper didn't speak. Her mom glanced around like she might find a defense hiding in the construction paper owls taped to the wall. "I know you enjoy this environment," she added, voice tinged with judgment, "but maybe it's time to think about the bigger picture. You're not a teenager anymore." Harper held up the glue stick in her hand. "Every day I teach kids that their feelings matter, that it's okay to say no, that they deserve respect." Her mom blinked. "I believe that," Harper said. "Even with glitter on my pants." "You're being dramatic," her mom said softly. "We're family." "No," Harper replied. "We're a system, and I'm no longer playing my assigned role." Her mom left, shaking her head. Disappointed. Always disappointed. And Harper went back into her classroom where a kid handed her a rainbow crayon and asked, "Can you help me draw a flying penguin?" No judgment. Just joy. Weeks passed. Then Elodie's birthday came and went. Harper didn't get an invitation. Instead, she saw the post. Elodie holding a giant cake, Amelia and Marcus in matching pastels. The caption read, "Some families are born. Others show up." Harper didn't reply. But she did something else. She booked a tiny venue. She pulled out her old costumes. She texted some parents from work, called in a few favors, and threw a party. Just her and Elodie. They wore wings, blew bubbles, told stories. No drama, just magic. At the end, Elodie whispered, "Best birthday ever." And Harper smiled because for once, she didn't have to fight to be seen. She just had to show up for herself. The first thing Harper noticed was the way Elodie lit up the moment she saw the sparkly tutu, not the pale Instagram-filtered one her mom had chosen for the official birthday photo shoot. This one was bright, neon pink layered over lavender with scattered rhinestones and tiny silver stars that shimmered when she moved. It wasn't Harper's intention to one-up anyone. She didn't even plan to throw a party until the day she saw the Facebook post. No invite, no mention. Just a gallery of smiling guests, monogrammed cupcakes, and staged photos where even Elodie looked like a prop. Harper had sat with it for a while. Then she'd stood up, opened the closet, and pulled down a box labeled magic supplies. Inside, fairy wings, dragon puppets, fabric crowns, glitter wands, a rainbow parachute, and more memories than she could count. She didn't text Amelia. She didn't ask for permission. She simply sent a short message. "Harper, if Elodie would like to spend the afternoon with me this weekend, I'd love to celebrate her in my own way." Amelia, "Keep it simple. Don't go overboard." Harper smiled when she read it. She wasn't sure Amelia had ever understood that for her, and simple was never the goal. The community hall wasn't fancy, but it had space, light, and more heart than any catering hall. Harper spent 2 days prepping. She cut out cardboard castle walls, strung fairy lights across folding chairs, filled goodie bags with stickers and bubble wands, and when Elodie arrived, her little face scrunched up in awe. "Fairy Auntie!" she squealed, running full speed into Harper's arms. "Where's the glitter dragon?" Harper grinned. "Sleeping backstage. But he told me he'd come out if we sing the Sparkle song." They sang, loudly, off-key. And sure enough, out came the dragon puppet, googly-eyed, goofy, and drooling glitter from his felt mouth. The children, mostly Harper's students and their siblings, cheered like it was the halftime show at the Super Bowl. One mom whispered, "This is, kind of amazing." Harper shrugged, blushing. "I used to do parties like this all the time." They played pin the tail on the narwhal. They had a crown-making station, and when snack time came, it wasn't organic cupcakes with edible gold dust, but rainbow fruit kebabs, popcorn and paper cones, and a glitter-shaped cookie cake that said, "Elodie the Brave." Because Harper had started calling her that recently. Not for any big reason, just because she noticed how Elodie stood up for quieter kids in the sandbox, or how she once declared, "I'm not tired, I'm just resting my excitement." Harper saw herself in that little girl, not in how she looked or how she dressed, but in how she used magic to survive. Midway through the party, Elodie sat beside Harper and whispered, "This party is better than the other one." Harper blinked. "You remember the other one?" Elodie nodded. "That one had big cake, but this one has dragons." She said it like it was obvious, like all good parties should have dragons. Harper's throat tightened, not because it was a competition. She hadn't wanted it to be. But because this child, this wide-eyed girl with rainbow face paint and frosting on her nose, could tell the difference between real joy and posed perfection. Harper looked around. At the crooked paper decorations, the slightly too loud speaker playing silly songs, the group of kids waving ribbon wands like they were marching into battle, no one was live streaming. No one was comparing RSVP counts. It wasn't the kind of party that got hashtags, but it was the kind that left marks, in glitter and in memory. After cake, they sat on the floor in a circle. Elodie asked Harper to read the story about the girl who turned invisible but found her voice. It was one Harper had written herself. Just a short picture book draft tucked into her journal. She told Elodie about it once during bedtime. "She had no magic," Harper read aloud, "but she had words, and sometimes that was enough to break spells." Elodie sat very still, crown tilted, watching Harper as if the story was made of truth and not fiction. And maybe, Harper thought, it was both. After the party, while the last of the juice boxes were packed away and parents thanked her with real warmth in their eyes, Harper knelt to zip up Elodie's sparkly backpack. "Did you have fun, birthday girl?" Elodie nodded hard. Then she leaned in and whispered, "Next year can we have another fairy party?" Harper laughed. "Absolutely, even if I have to rent a castle and train 3 new dragons." Elodie wrapped her arms around Harper's neck. "You're my favorite grown-up." The words knocked something loose in Harper's chest, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Not favorite auntie, not favorite babysitter, just favorite grown-up. That night, Harper didn't post about the party. No captions, no comparison photos. She just uploaded a few shots to a private folder. One where Elodie was spinning the ribbon wands, surrounded by kids and confetti, her smile real and unfiltered. Then Harper sat on the floor and exhaled. It hadn't been revenge. It hadn't even been rebellion. It had just been love, freely given without expectations or strings. And maybe that's why it left such a mark. Because it told the truth. Not the curated truth of holiday cards or polished speeches, but the real truth. About who shows up, who sees you, who builds joy from cardboard and glitter when others offer you only guilt. The kind of truth that sticks, like glitter on skin, refusing to be washed away. It started with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, humming kind that follows a shift too big to ignore. After the party, Harper threw for Elodie, a riot of color, sparkle, and joy that no one in the family had expected. No one in the family said anything. Not a thank you, not a complaint. Just nothing. Like if they ignored it hard enough, it might disappear, but it didn't, because Elodie didn't stop talking about it. To anyone who would listen. At daycare, she reenacted the whole thing with her classmates, assigning roles for the puppet show and trying to glue confetti onto the classroom walls. At the grocery store, she asked the cashier if they had glitter wands, like my fairy auntie. And at church, she stood up during children's time and declared, "My other birthday party had a dragon." The good kind. It would have been adorable if it wasn't so inconvenient. Harper didn't think much of it at first. Kids talk. Kids remember what lights them up. But then her phone stopped ringing. Invitations from coworkers to grab coffee dried up. One of the moms from her preschool class suddenly dropped out of the parent committee without explanation. And when she passed 2 women whispering outside the post office, they looked up, startled, and fell silent so fast it was almost funny. Almost. Then came the questions. Not to her directly, of course, but to the daycare, to the community center, to one of her old classmates who worked part-time at the library. Questions like, is it true Harper took the child without permission? Or wasn't there some incident at a party? Or the always popular, well, you know, she's always been a little much. The worst part? None of it came from strangers. It came from people she'd known her whole life. People who'd watched her grow up. People who had once applauded her as she spun on stage in a homemade fairy costume for the school talent show. Now they were talking like she was unstable, like she was dangerous, like she hadn't spent years being everyone's cheerful backup plan. It stung more than she wanted to admit. Even at work, the shift was noticeable. Her boss remained supportive but cautious. "Just keep things professional for a while," she'd said gently, after a vague concern had been phoned in. "You know how people talk." As if Harper had any illusions left about that. At home, she sat on the floor of her small apartment, surrounded by bins of fabric and leftover party supplies, trying to figure out how joy had turned into scandal. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had the messages, the RSVP, the drop-off time, the confirmation text. Everything was clear. But in the court of small-town public opinion, truth was rarely as powerful as narrative, and the narrative had taken off without her. Amelia had gone quiet again, not in the apologetic, uncertain way from before. This time it felt like calculation, like damage control, like Harper's existence had become a liability she was trying to neutralize. And then came the editorial. It wasn't about her, not officially. But when the local paper ran a letter from a concerned grandparent decrying the dangers of irresponsible role models and non-traditional family arrangements, the subtext was clearer than the headline. They even included a line about parties that prioritize whimsy over stability. Harper read it 3 times, then folded it up and slid it into her growing folder of evidence. tucked neatly between the daycare's glowing report on Elodie and the list of workshops she'd recently been invited to lead. She could have responded, written a letter of her own, called out the lies. But something in her had shifted. Let them talk. Let them whisper and speculate and clutch their pearls over glitter and dragons. Because the only voice that really mattered, the one that echoed in her mind when things got heavy, was Elodie's, shrieking with laughter as she'd run through a stream of bubbles yelling, "This is the best day!" That joy couldn't be erased, not by silence, not by slander, and certainly not by a town too scared of difference to see the value of delight. One evening, as Harper locked up her storage unit after organizing her supplies, she saw a familiar face pulling in, Mrs. Llewellyn, her high school drama teacher. Now retired but still sharp, still elegant in that way older women sometimes carried like armor. "Harper," she called out, "been meaning to talk to you." Harper tensed, but Mrs. Llewellyn smiled. "I saw the photos, the fairy party, the glitter. It reminded me of that puppet show you did in 10th grade. Remember? The princess who didn't want to be saved. You made half the audience cry. In a good way?" Harper laughed, startled. "I remember. The dragon fell off the table and knocked over the punch bowl." "It was perfect," the woman said. "And so is this. Don't let people who fear color and courage make you doubt what you do." Harper nodded, throat tight. "Thank you, really." As Mrs. Llewellyn drove away, Harper stood for a moment under the street lamp, hands in her pockets, heart steadier than it had been in weeks. Let them talk. Let the silence morph into stories and the stories into fictions. She had something they didn't. Purpose. And sometimes the truest things start in whispers and glitter and quiet, resolute joy. She went home that night and wrote a new plan. Because this wasn't about surviving the talk. It was about outlasting it, with truth, with color, and with wings still very much intact. 3 years later, Harper still wore the star-shaped earrings a preschooler once gave her, saying, "This looks like you." They weren't expensive, just pale blue plastic, but they meant something. These days, everything Harper did had to mean something. The small town that once whispered about the weird aunt with the fairy parties now knew her name for another reason. She was the founder of Bright and Brave, a creative event company that blended education and celebration. Birthday parties weren't just balloons and cake anymore. They had STEM scavenger hunts, recycled art corners, interactive puppet shows, and something she called the Make-A-Wish and Make It Real station, where every child was asked, "What do you want to create today?" There were no more frantic calls from her mom asking if she could watch Elodie just for a few hours. No last-minute texts from Amelia expecting her to drop everything. That version of family, the one built on guilt and assumed servitude, had quietly fallen away. In its place was a new one, built on respect, boundaries, and purpose. Her new community saw Elodie not as a helper, not as the fun aunt, but as a leader, a visionary who knew that play was powerful, and imagination wasn't something kids needed to outgrow. Harper had 2 employees now. One had been an art teacher laid off after budget cuts. The other was a college student studying social work. Both had told her the same thing during their interviews. "I love working with kids, but I got tired of people treating it like a hobby." Harper had smiled and said, "Great. Let's make silly serious then." Her week was full. Mondays were for brainstorming new event formats. Tuesdays, she trained her storytelling team. Wednesdays, she brought her fairy math program to a local preschool where she turned number games into rescue missions and treasure maps. The rest of her week was emails, vendor calls, costume repairs, supply runs, and somehow it all felt like joy, not work. Elodie was 5 now. Each year she still asked Harper, "Can you do the sparkle show at my birthday?" And Harper did, but not because she was expected to, because she wanted to. Last time, Elodie stood on a tiny stage in a handmade paper crown and recited her own story, loud and proud. Harper didn't cry, but she held the mic a little tighter as if steadying her heart. Her mother never formally apologized, but one year a birthday card came in the mail with a single sentence inside. "We were wrong to think glitter meant weakness. Turns out it meant vision." Harper didn't write back, but she kept the card in a wooden box labeled in "Things that hurt, now healed." Amelia still sent the occasional photo of Elodie, usually her daughter painting or building cardboard castles. Their relationship wasn't warm, but it was honest. Once Amelia even messaged, "It's wild how obsessed she is with crafts and books now. I think you made that stick." Harper had no desire to go back to the old dynamic. She wasn't waiting for praise or validation. She had built something that didn't require it. 3 years ago, she'd chosen to grow up, not into the kind of adult her family wanted, but into the kind she could actually be proud of. Not the grown-up with a briefcase and a mortgage. The grown-up who wore bunny ears and read bedtime stories and knew how to say no without guilt. They had told her, grow up, so she did. Just not in the way they meant.